Hey guys, welcome into the Corked Up Podcast, extras episode edition. This was going to be rapid fire first take thoughts. But Frank and I were like, yeah, fuck it. It's Tuesday. We'll just record it on podcast because really, like, it's exciting that the Bears hired their GM, spoilers. But at the same time, you talk about it for like 5 minutes and then you're kind of like, okay, that's the news. And then so we wanted to take some time to really think about what it could mean. I'm for me, it's kind of sunk in a little bit more. Frank, I'm sure you probably saw some additional stories that you maybe either liked or didn't like. We could definitely get into that. But if you've been living under a rock that isn't bear shaped, I guess that makes sense. The Bears did hire their GM, and it is Ryan Poles. Ryan Poles, not Pace. It's gonna be tough, man. It's gonna be tough to transition to. But he was the VP of Player Personnel in or what was his title with Kansas City?
I think that was it. VP of Player Personnel with Kansas City was his last role there.
Let's take a look. I'm gonna confirm that. I believe you.
I think you're right. I think you're correct.
Yeah. So yeah, we saw.
Yep, executive of Player Personnel, Ryan Poles.
Look at that. Getting it right on the first try. We saw that George McCaskey went to pick him up from the airport. It was weird. I saw the first person that posted that was kind of like laughing at it, but I feel like most people that I saw commenting and reacting on their own liked that George McCaskey went in full Bears gear to pick up their guy. To me, Frank, as soon as I saw that, I was like, all right, this dude isn't leaving the building today. He's getting
up. Yeah, and the thing is, we spoke on the phone just to coordinate what we wanted this to look like. And this is the first thing that I told you when it came to that is, like, I get George isn't the most likable guy. Well, I don't even want to say that, but like personality-wise, we've gotten frustrated with the way, they run things with the Bears and just like the lack of structure sometimes. But you can't use that to act like that wasn't some cool shit to do. If that was Mark Cuban, if that was fucking who's the Colts owner, who everyone loves, Jim Irsay doing that, they'd have been like, holy shit, look at this guy. Like, he just a fucking stand-up owner. Like, dude, I get it. You have your gripes, not you, the general. You have your gripes with George McCaskey, but that was some cool ass shit to do. He went to go get his guy, full decked out our Bears jacket. That was a dope ass jacket.
That's
all he was missing. Hey, the only thing he was missing was some orange and blue shoes. Had he had something to match, that would have been really cool.
He had the orange and blue shoes.
Oh, did he? I must not have been paying attention. Yeah. But all in all, that to me is awesome. Like, think about it from the GM's perspective. Imagine like a job calls you, hey, we got this opening. We'd like to interview you. Okay, cool. And then the owner, the CEO, whoever, like the highest guy, the guy that's hiring you comes to pick you up. You're like, oh, that would make me feel good.
This is in the bag.
This is in the bag here. We have mutual interest. We're ready to go. That's what I mean. So like people who were doing that, I thought were, and this is something we both said on the phone, like, you're just looking for shit to be mad about. Like, what are you? It's very, very strange. I thought that was stupid.
One of the things I think we've complained the most about with the Bears and how they're run is it feels very mom and pop. It's like it's a family business. But this is one of those times where it can work in your favor.
Yes.
It's not just another industry. It's not just another job. It's like there's some personal touches to this where it just feels that just made you feel good. You know what I mean? Like, and we saw some things now where, of that committee that we were a little skeptical of at first, with Bill Polian and Ted Phillips and, all those other people. And, this was everyone's number one guy. And that makes me feel good because, I told you I was a little concerned that the names that kept coming up were guys related to the Colts. And again, I think the Colts are run very well. Obviously, I think they have a really good GM and a really good front office. But to me, it was just like a little worrisome just because it was not only the GMs, it was also head coach candidates. Jim Caldwell ties to the Colts. Matt Eberflus ties to the Colts. It was just like, man, like, is Bill Polian is he just picking his guys that he wants to be a part of this thing? And it was good to kind of, that's why I liked that the pool was so wide open, man. Mm-hmm. Like, I know people were getting frustrated that they just kept interviewing people. I just don't understand how that's a bad thing. I just don't get it. One person had been hired before today.
Yeah.
And that was for the Giants. Like, I didn't understand why everyone was so worried about not getting their guy. Like, no one had been hired.
And that was the same. I had the same feeling as people who were complaining about George McCaskey going to do that, as people who were complaining about the wide net. And you got fucking David Kaplan out here, who I told you this when we met. I can't stand that guy. Like, I know we're, doing our thing with media. He is a fucking clown to me. Yeah. Like, he says and it's not like this inner hatred that I have for the guy. He said stuff that I totally agree with, but then he has these meatball takes like the other day. It's day 18 of the Bear search, and the fact that we haven't given Jim Harbaugh a blank check and have done this. And I talked to a guy who's highly connected in the widest search in the coaching firm. Oh, but they're not helping anyone search this year, David, are they, you fucking idiot? And then he's like, oh, and they said, how many? 12 and 8? That sounds like a shit show. Meanwhile, we get the fucking number one guy on everybody's list. Shut up sometimes, man. Like, this is my problem sometimes with sports media, is that people feel the need to be so sensationalized. Have the Bears done anything to warrant our trust in this? No, you should go in with skepticism, but to sit there and do that, to go over the ledge when no one had even been hired, you're talking about fucking interviews, dude.
Holding Bears fans hostage is
holding Bears fans hostage is how you like. What are you talking about,
Frank?
Bro?
I'm gonna be honest. I would look at Twitter for maybe 5 minutes a day just to see what people were tweeting, if there were any like new updates with interviews or anything like that, and then I moved on, because
that's what I'm saying.
There's nothing you can do. You don't know what those interviews are really looking like. What I did love, though, Frank, is that he was the Vikings' top choice. Clearly, like that, from all reports, the Vikings were like, all right, this is our guy. And the Bears are like, no, come here. We're gonna figure this out. Same thing happened with Justin Fields. It's incredible. They wanted Justin Fields. They wanted to trade up. Boom. Nope. We're going to stop you. That's awesome. I love that. And I just think, I don't know, this feels different than the Ryan Pace thing. I know we were talking a little bit about it before, but Ryan Pace kind of, maybe I wasn't as like invested in the 2015 search as I am now, but like Ryan Pace felt like he kind of just came out of nowhere. Like, people weren't really looking at him, and he just like happened to fall in this opportunity. Now we know that some back channel things were happening. The Saints' relationship with the Bears kind of played into a lot of that. But I mean, this is a guy that makes sense. He's a guy who worked his way up. I sent it to you. He survived like what, three GM changes? Yeah, Pioli, Dorsey, and Veach. And he survived every time, and they kept him around. They kept promoting him. Like, he worked his way into this position, and that excites me. That really excites me.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of diversity that you need, whether it's like diversity within an organization or diversity with other organizations to be under or working alongside, depending on what your role is. That's important. And we didn't see that with Ryan Pace. It was the same regime. It was the same thing. And to your point, of being worried about Bill Polian being a part of the search and maybe only talking about Colts stuff. That was a big thing with Ernie Accorsi. He was Pace's guy. Pace was his guy. Like, that was like the number one recommendation. He had been saying that he should have gotten a job years ago, and he threw him our way. And it was like, all right, let's do it because of Ernie. And they just took the total opposite approach. But I don't think they took the total opposite approach just to do it. It wasn't like, because it's so Bears to go from, well, offensive head coach didn't work out, so we're gonna get a defense. Oh, the defense didn't work out? We're gonna get us an offensive head coach. They didn't just do the opposite just to do the opposite. They did it because I think they really learned from that. I think they said, you know what, we need to talk to as many people as we can. Because the thing is, and this is where the frustration can set in with George McCaskey, is you're not necessarily interviewing everyone to get the job. Get some intel, dude. Like, talk to people, see what they think, and everyone combine their notes and get intel from people, whether that's intel on another organization, intel on what other people think of the situation right here in Chicago. You can do that a million different ways to do that. People do that in like the regular work.
Yeah.
They're like interview people just to see what the other places are doing. Super competitive, like sales jobs. They do that all the time. They're not going to hire you. They just want to see what you know. You know what I mean? And I don't know if they did that, but I'm just saying, like, you can interview people and not have any intention of hiring them. So I thought that was very encouraging as well. But the last point I want to make with George and everything and sort of the family business is we touched on this. I think it was immediately after they fired Pace and Nagy, was that, that is their reputation. It's like, this is a family owned thing. And sometimes, as frustrating as it can be, there are times like when Zach Miller gets hurt, they sign him to a 1-year deal so he can rehab in their facilities. There are times like this where, hey, we got our guy, we're going to be there. And it's the same thing kind of with the Ricketts. Like, we're getting frustrated now because like money's tied up and it's family money and such. But like when they were building this thing, fucking Ricketts were in the bleachers. That was the coolest shit ever. Like our owners just chilling with the fan. Like there's going to be some give and take when it comes to that. But, again, you can't just criticize just to criticize. That's silly to me. I still think that was very cool on his part.
To your point about kind of not just doing the opposite to do the opposite, thought it was pretty ballsy to hire a 36-year-old GM, considering Ryan Pace was pretty young when he got hired as well as the GM here. So I really liked that. I thought that was maybe a sign that the times are changing. Frank, there are a couple other things that I wanted to talk about that I did like. A lot of people, myself included, initially were a little concerned that we saw Jim Caldwell was in Hallis Hall today, and everyone was like, all right, done deal, let's go. But then you're like, are they kind of just pairing him up? Like, is it going to be kind of the same thing with John Fox and the young, older head coach, young GM, like, and people were like, no, this isn't going to work. It's the same thing. But from what we saw, I've seen a couple sources basically say like, no, like Ryan Poles basically said, I will take this job if I get to hire my own head coach. And that's badass. I love that. I love that. It. And they're interviewing 3 guys right now: Jim Caldwell, Matt Eberflus, the DC of the Indianapolis Colts, and then help me out with the last one, Frank. We've been going back and forth with these. Dan Quinn.
Eberflus and Dan Quinn. Yep.
Dan Quinn from the DC, from the Cowboys, former head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. And it sounds like it's either these 3 or he could add on and keep interviewing, which is interesting because a lot of people have made connections to his time at Boston College with Brian Flores. And, I think him and Dable have a relationship. I'm not sure how, though. I know Dable just completed his second round interview with the Giants. I saw that right before we started recording. So I think he's going to want to take a chance to get to know people. And then the last thing I wanted to comment on as well, Frank, was I liked seeing that it wasn't just interviews separately. It sounded like they were having GMs talk to head coaches while they were interviewing. I thought that was kind of interesting because it kind of takes the worst part of the mock interview from back when Bruce Arians got passed over for Mark Trestman. It takes the best part of it where it's like, all right, how would you interact with each other if you were, working together? I don't know what those conversations looked like. Obviously, we won't know that for probably 5 years, 10 years, maybe. Yeah. So, but I thought I did like that because it felt different. It felt like they're doing something a little bit different, but also smarter in the same sense.
Agreed. And to your first point, that was the first thing that I saw when they showed, or they reported that Jim Caldwell was in the building. And I want to put this out there now so you all can hold me accountable if I change my mind. But as it stands right now, Jim Caldwell was my safe hire. Like, that's the guy that if we have to get him, I'm fine with that. He's a solid coach. He's a culture setter. I think he would be good for this locker. I think he'd be great for Justin Fields, to be perfectly honest with you. But obviously there's, I want to reach for a little bit higher than that. But when the report was, he said, no, I get to pick my guy. And if that is Jim Caldwell, I'm going to pick him. You guys don't do, this is my job. And for, to me, that just shows not only, are you going to settle to, which Ryan Pace clearly did, but again, it's no judgment. There are 32 of these fucking jobs. You're going to take them. Someone was going to take this if they were going to be forced with the head coach regardless. But the fact that he had the confidence to do that, and I mean, quite frankly, the leverage. If we said no to that, he's going to Minnesota.
Yeah.
And that is just telling to me. that, George, whether he really wanted to give him that sort of free reign from the beginning or not, he loved him that much from the interviews that he had to. He had to concede that whether or not he wanted to or not. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like he had, and like to me, that is a really good sign to me. And again, 5 years from now, he may have worse drafts than Ryan Pace. He may make some bad free agents. We don't know. We don't know what the future holds. But as it stands right now, we can't revise history and act like this was a bad signing, even if he messes up with this job. This was this is a good signing.
Yeah, and it's coming at a really good time. What I liked, Frank, that I saw, I'm not 100% sure of how accurate this is, but I did see some things about Omar Khan, the guy from the Steelers. He was reportedly interviewing not for the GM position. Yeah. So that's what I liked, is that because one of the reasons Rick Smith was our top choice, which again, from what we've seen, I think that's pretty much out. I don't know if he really does want to come back to the NFL at this point. I mean, like I saw, we saw the thing where the Bears are interested, he's interested, and then nothing from the Bears, nothing from outside teams, nothing at all. And the reason we liked him so much was because he was kind of the boss above the boss. And we were hoping for a structure like that with the Bears. And if Omar Khan is interviewing for a position like that, he may still be hired in that position. But I think at this point, it would be reporting to Ryan Poles, because it just doesn't make sense to hire a VP after you've hired a GM, because usually you want to follow some sort of structure. So who knows what this reorganization could look like? It could look completely different. But I'm excited that they are talking about potentially having some sort of different structure than what we've been used to with the Bears and what we've been so frustrated with. I mean, I was apprehensive at first, because I was kind of like, it's the Bears. I don't think they've earned that type of just blind faith that this is going to work out. And what I've been happy with from fans, from media, whatever, is that they're not just like holding back and saying, well, let's wait and see. Like, people are genuinely excited, and it's kind of coming out that this dude was a legit candidate, and that makes me happy. That makes me feel like they may have gotten this thing right. Again, we don't know for sure, and I'm not going to feel bad if, being like, oh my God, we were so wrong, like you were saying. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But right now, it feels like a very good hire.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the reason why I felt that was important to say is because I see a lot of people revising the history of the Lovie Smith era. He's still the best coach that we've ever experienced in Chicago. Well, with the Bears anyway. And it's probably not even particularly close in our lifetime. But people look to that 10-6 season and say, oh, fuck, I mean, look, we should have just held on to, we haven't won since. And it was like, come on, dude. You're stripping away all context of what happened and why he was let go finally. And I don't want the same thing to happen here, where it was, it's like, if he winds up being bad and we get rid of him in 4 or 5 years, you can't be like, oh, they fucked up again. They didn't. They made a good hire, but now he has to get the job done. Like, there has to be some accountability on his part. And based on everything that I'm hearing, everything that I'm seeing, I like it, man.
Yeah, a lot of people around the Chiefs are really excited about this as well. So I think that's really cool. And just, like I said, man, it's just, it makes a lot of sense. And I'll also, I know it doesn't really mean anything, but it's kind of cool that he was an undrafted rookie in 2008 with the Bears. They have his little picture and everything. It's pretty great, man. But this is exciting for sure.
I will say this: the pessimist in me is just saying that he got hired because
he was a Bear.
No, not even that. No.
Oh.
That's not where my mind went. It's because the name tag on Ryan Pace's office, it's going to be cheaper to just replace the ACE with the OLE.
That's why George went to pick him up.
He was like, look,
they couldn't afford another car. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. All you have to do is reprint over the business cards. You're saving the team money. You're saving the family money here with this hire. No, I'm kidding. But I did see a lot of jokes about Pole and Pace, and I thought that was funny.
Well, just wait until they hire Matt Eberflus, and then it's Ryan and Matt all over again.
Ryan and Matt all over. I mean, that's what I'm saying. The 2.0, the upgraded version. Not for nothing as well. Is Ryan Poles the first black GM of the Chicago Bears? Have we had a black GM before?
My gut instinct says no.
In our lifetime, we have not. We've had Angelo. I forgot who was just before Angelo, but I know it was a white guy. And then Emery, and then Pace, right? Those were the three.
Yeah, and well, even if the Bears did have a black GM before, Ryan Pace kind of wipes that out because of how white he was.
It's just that's probably true. But I mean that shouldn't go unnoticed as well. I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah, I think he is. I would guess he is. And the Bears just actually tweeted it out that they've officially hired him. So
do we know the length of the contract? Do they announce those all the time?
They do not announce lengths of GM contracts. I don't believe.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, he's coming from a really good organization. What I like is that he's coming from an organization that isn't known for being in cap hell. Because that was one of my concerns when Ryan Pace was coming from the Saints, was that they their cap situation is always terrible. And also the Chiefs weren't good just because of Patrick Mahomes. They were good for a while with Alex Smith as their quarterback, with other quarterbacks. Like they're a good franchise to come from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not just a franchise quarterback that's established them as one of the best. They're a proven franchise that can find other players to complement that quarterback position. How many quarterbacks have we seen that have had really bad rosters and not able to win Super Bowls? They've put the guys around Patrick Mahomes to win and keep winning, keep going to the playoffs. Like, this isn't just a one and done thing. Like, this is exciting. I'm starting to get myself excited, Frank.
No, I totally agree. And that was really the last thing that I wanted to say. It was a perfect segue from you. Is I saw people like, oh, here we go. We hired from the Chiefs again. And it's like the coaching side and the executive side are two totally different. Like, that was my biggest thing. I wish Eric Bieniemy all the luck and greatness in the world, wherever he winds up being a head coach. It could not be with the Bears. I'm scoring from Matt Nagy from that. I can't, because we just, the genius that Andy Reid is, we have no idea how he structures his coaching staff. You know what I mean? Whereas the executive side, we know what this guy has done in that organization through different regimes and the different experiences that he's had. That's totally different. You know what I mean? So to act like, oh, this is going to fail because Matt Nagy failed. I mean, that's a total. Now, if we hired Bieniemy, I'm here for all the those comparisons, but this is nothing like that.
Yeah. And that stuff is why I like that they had the wide search that they did, because it wasn't just let's interview the Saints, the Chiefs, guys that they've cherry picked people from before. They cast a wide net, and from all intents and purposes, they picked their guy that they wanted the most.
Yeah,
it's as simple as that. It really is.
So this okay. So technically, Ryan Poles is the first black general manager of the Chicago Bears. But they had Rod Graves. They didn't have a GM until Mark Hatley. He was the first ever general manager. They used to leave that sort of thing up to the director of player personnel. So, and that's Rod Graves is doing the drafting from that position. And so technically, but there was someone who did a similar job. But they've had structure. I was listening to Dave Wanstead on a podcast, and they've had structural issues for a very, very long time. And he touched on that.
Yeah,
he has
unsurprisingly.
He has no hard feelings towards it. He was just being honest as to like what that structure was and how he reported to the family and things like that. So,
yeah, but one thing that I do like is just, yeah, one of our favorite sayings on this podcast is the Bears are always a step behind, right? They're always a step too late. The fact that they've jumped the Vikings to get their quarterback and jumped the Vikings again to get the GM they want. Who knows, Frank?
But you know what though, Jack? There's also like nuance to it, because had they rushed it and like just picked panic pick someone first because they felt the need to, that wouldn't have felt good. It was sort of how we described Ryan Pace moving up to get Justin Fields. He could have traded up to 4 and no one would have, no one would have been like, oh my God, you trade. Like, was number 2. He was number 1 on some people's boards. He was anywhere from 1 to 3 that I saw on everyone except for Chris Sims's board. But it was like, this had that same feel for me. Like, like little stuff. We cast the wide net. We got it. And then here's our guy. We're zeroing in. Bam. Go and get him.
And one thing we should say is, Phil Emery was also from the Chiefs. And, we were somewhat excited about that, because, again, the Chiefs were solid. But every candidate's so different, man. And it's just like hearing about what they do. And I don't know. I didn't see the stuff I saw about Ryan Poles that I saw people talking about Phil Emery. I just didn't see that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, this I remember, and I wanted to make sure I was correct. He had so many Bears ties.
He was a scout with the Bears.
He was a scout with the Bears for 6 years.
Yeah.
And then he went to the Falcons. Yeah, so I mean, it just, that's what it felt like. I do remember that, when people being a little hesitant because it was like they just picked someone they were familiar with.
Yeah, exactly. And now they hired a guy that was literally on their team.
Yeah,
he did make the final 53.
But he had no executive experience.
No.
With the Bears whatsoever, because that to me is the same old. He was an area scout with the Bears for 6 years. So he learned the game from people who don't know the game.
Yeah.
And no knock to him. He's had success in different roles but I'm just saying, like, that's what made, I remember, people uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I would assume the Bears will hire their head coach by the end of this week, either Wednesday or Thursday. Thursday at the latest is my best guess, unless they extend that candidate pool. But maybe we get something a little bit later next week. But we'll obviously talk about that when that pops up. Frank, let's go ahead and jump over to the main pod where we will discuss the divisional round, which, I mean, was absolutely probably the best weekend of football overall. And then we'll get into our championship picks because we got some good games coming up here, man. So let's head over there. This is YouTube exclusive as always, and we'll catch you guys on the main pod.
Later, y'all.